where their children are, whether they need to share responsibility for their children, how old they are, all of those things.
I find it extraordinary how the political class in this country still cannot bring themselves to admit that there's a demand problem with regards to the housing crisis in this country.
The left never seems to learn, do they? Time and time again, they prove just how out of touch they are with the real concerns of the British public. So is it really any surprise that Reform UK is surging ahead in the polls? People are fed up with the same old empty rhetoric, and they are turning to a party that actually speaks for them. In today's video, we will be breaking down some incredible footage from a recent panel discussion where Reform MP Zia Youssef absolutely destroys the left-wing narrative in a housing debate. The so-called experts on the panel were left humiliated and completely unable to counter his points. It's a must-watch moment that perfectly highlights why so many people are ditching the establishment parties in favor of real change. But that's not all. We'll also watch and react to the recent Sky News interview of Keir Starmer, where he was grilled on mine is failures. But before we get started, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Have a look at this.
Pace, we should get that done. When we look at things like the housing crisis that we have in the UK, which is both a supply issue and a quality issue in other parts of the country, we know that build-out rates around new infrastructure are much faster than they are elsewhere. So new infrastructure development for transport will deliver more homes. That's good.
You're shaking your head, Zia.
I find it extraordinary how the political class in this country still cannot bring themselves to admit that there's a demand problem with regards to the housing crisis in this country. We talk about supply. What about the demand? So if you look over the last 3 years, 2 million net new people arrived in the country. The country built 600,000 new homes. It's as good as we've done in several decades. You take Labour's existing target to build 1.5 million new homes. By their own statistics, we're going to add 2.5 million net new people in that time. So we're building nowhere near enough homes, even if they hit that target, which they won't for the reason we just described. And then we look at what's happened today in terms of the ONS, who have said we're going to add another 5 million net new people. That is net migration staying at 700,000 per year. There is no way we are ever going to build enough homes to cater for that demand. And we are never even talking about it. Reform are the only party who actually understand that the housing crisis in this country is a supply and a demand problem.
There is also major vacancies across the construction sector and has been for a very, very long time. Young British people are simply not choosing to go into those professions. You ask any of the major organisations that represent the construction sector, they are saying the jobs are there. These are good jobs. These are good jobs outside of London and in other parts of the country. But we have both a skills issue and then an inclination issue to go into these roles. And that, I'm afraid, is part of the issue about why we need to talk about Europe and the relationship with Europe, and perhaps some kind of youth mobility scheme for young people in order to try and fill some of those vacancies.
Is the population explosion not an issue then? You do not think that the population explosion, net migration staying at 700,000 a year, you don't think that's a problem contributing to the housing crisis?
What we have had in this country is a very serious housing problem for a very, very long time, far longer than we've seen large levels of migration over the last decade or so. It predates that. I couldn't get on the housing ladder when I first started working. That was a very long time ago. What we've got to think about is both the quality issue in certain parts of the country as well as the supply side and the pressures on that demand. And what we've got in this country is we have poorly managed population growth. When we look at other countries who have done it much better, I would look at Canada for that as an example of how to manage population change in a much less laissez-faire way than we've had from successive governments.
All right, well, let's just, I would like to get, and that means you would lower the levels of net migration.
Well, if we've got people doing the jobs here, then yes, we will be able to do that. And we've already said that we would want to be able to lower the levels of net migration as people increase their skills in this country.
Is there
That's why we've committed to Skills England as well.
Well, sharing the
just said that the population in this country, we're going to have 5 million net new people.
I think it's about 330,000
It's also people living longer, it's people getting divorced and living apart, it's people having different lifestyles as well. I think we need to acknowledge that people live in a very different way from when most of our homes were built.
How does someone's different lifestyle affect population growth?
Well, because of where they choose to live, how close they are to where they live, how big they want their homes to be, who they choose to live with, where their children are. are, whether they need to share responsibility for their children, how old they are. All of those things change the kind of homes we need to have. And those kind of things mean that we need to think about building those homes in the right places, in the right design, for the right people.
That's an issue of dispersal of people and concentration of people.
But that's also important in terms of economic growth.
And I absolutely agree, that's one thing, but the overarching factor that is going to override this government for the next 4 or 5 years is net migration adding to the total population at the scale that is predicted is not going to be sustainable and is going to cause this government all sorts of problems, potentially with community cohesion. There's going to be a big breakdown coming in the future. I mean, Zia's here, Reformer all over this, right? They're not going away. It has to be grappled with. We can't pretend that it's all going to be okay. We have to answer these difficult questions.
What are your thoughts on this, WAG? Let me know in the comments. Now let's discuss the main topic of the day. Starmer, Labour, and their interviews are always the same. It's become predictable, hasn't it? Every time Keir Starmer or the Labour Party take the spotlight for an interview, the formula never changes. There's always a lot of dodging, plenty of stuttering, and of course a complete refusal to take responsibility. Instead, everything, absolutely everything, is somehow the fault of the Tories. The Prime Minister is put under pressure by the interviewer, but, as we've come to expect from Starmer, it's nothing but sidestep after sidestep. No clear answers, just the usual deflections as always. Have a watch of this.
England's just cut interest rates, but it's also halved growth for 2025 forecast and raised the inflation forecast and said employers' national insurance hike will raise prices and hit jobs more than expected. It's a poor verdict on your budget and bad news for your growth plan. You must be really disappointed.
Well, what I think is significant today is that the interest rates have come down. That's the third cut in interest rates since July. That is really important because that means more money in people's pockets. Of course, wages are going up higher than inflation. Again, more money in people's pockets. But we're never going to turn around the economy in just 6 or 7 months. It was always going to take time. There's more to do. And that's why the announcement we're making today about nuclear, which is moving this on significantly to small modular reactors, getting again to the front of the queue in the world on that, making sure that can be done elsewhere across the country. So AI, data centres and nuclear can come together. This is hugely important. That means lots of investment into our country, which is then measured in jobs. So when it comes to growth...
They said that your NI is going to cut jobs. They said the NI hike will cut jobs.
Well, there's been an increase of, I think, 70,000 jobs since we came into power. So I think that shows the trajectory when it comes to jobs. But the only way to get sustained jobs in this country is to get the investment in. And that's why I'm really pleased that we've got the highest levels of investment now for 20 years. That's only coming because of the big decisions that we're taking. It will take time, but we've got to see these decisions through because this is what is going to turn the economy in the long run and make sure that people don't just see a line on a graph, but feel better off.
What are your thoughts on what we discussed in today's video? Let me know down in the comments section below, and make sure you do drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel for more British content.